let's go through all of the books that I read and listened to in June, and it was all fine. Fine. June was fine. Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Sinead and this is my spooky corner of YouTube where I talk about spooky books, spooky films, spooky things that I have experienced or seen through the day, or just bring you excerpts of my life, should you wish to watch that. It is time for my June reading wrap-up to go through the books that I got through in that month. There was one absolute 5-star banger in there, a couple that I was a little disappointed with, I can't lie, but would still recommend, and a bunch of audiobooks that were absolutely fine. I thought I was going to feel more disappointed with June purely because I had a couple of high expectations for a couple of the books that I'd read, and it was a little bit of a slow month in terms of physical copies and Kindle copies. I churned through audiobooks, and audiobooks count, don't come at me trying to say that they don't. But overall I thought, you know what, yeah, I'd listened to a lot of solid books, and I am really looking forward to July for reasons. As ever, these reviews are based on my opinion, my reading of the books, the way I absorbed them. If you loved or hated any of the books on this list, you are right, don't worry. Also, if you followed me for a while, you'll know that my neighbour likes to wait until I start filming, I have convinced myself in my head, and then go into the garden and bring out a series of chainsaws and hammers and drills and just bash stuff out there while I'm filming. Waits until I've turned on the camera and then, well, let's just chainsaw this log for no reason. So if there's sound bleed, that's that. Now let me get this out of the way. I started in June House of Leaves. The House of Leaves. And I had crazy ideas that I might be able to finish the book in June. No. If you're a subscriber, you'll know I've started documenting my journey through House of Leaves bit by bit, consuming it, because House of Leaves 100% is a reading experience. It is not a book, despite what some people will assure you of, it's not a book that I feel you can just sort of sit down and lose yourself in and absorb and be swept away as you would most novels. It is written in such a strange, bizarre way with multiple stories interlinked. It is a full-on reading experience. You have to fully engage your brain, not that you wouldn't with any other reading, but there are sometimes you can passively read. This is active reading all the way through, and it's been interesting. I've done a vlog on the first part of it. I've got a second one coming up. I'm not as opposed to the book as I think I was when I started it. When I opened the book blind, I was going, oh no, because it's work, and it's work to find the story. But the further I'm going into it, I'm not minding it. But it is going to take time. I hope that it's worth it in the end, and I'm hopeful that I can share my views maybe later this month, but if it happens to be later in the summer, nobody minds. I'm still going to bring you updates. That out of the way. You shoo now. Now let's get to the completed books. The first book that I finished this month was Blood on Her Tongue. This is the second book by Johanna van Veen. I hope I pronounced that properly. She is the author of My Darling Dreadful Thing, which I read last year, and that was one of my top reads of 2024. My Darling Dreadful Thing was gothic, it was ghostly, it involved seances, it involved mediums, it involved hauntings with a twist. It was a sapphic story. It was so wonderfully atmospheric and lush and icy. I just loved it and recommend My Darling Dreadful Thing to many people. For my gothic fiction fans, it has some very cute literary references in there as well that will make you go, aha. Blood on Her Tongue is set in the Netherlands in the late 1800s. It's the story of a woman, Lucy, and her twin sister, Sarah. Lucy receives a letter from Sarah, who is married and lives on an estate with her husband, who is a quite successful industrialist. The letter that Lucy receives is quite troubling. Sarah seems to be experiencing some sort of mental breakdown and illness. Sarah has become fixated with the discovery of a bog body on her property. Sarah is a very intelligent, analytical young woman. She was involved in the discovery, but she now feels that the bog body, the uncovering of this body, has unleashed something, and that the bog body is trying to infiltrate her in some way. Lucy goes to the property, and in true Gothic style, we have her living in the estate. A slight tension between her and Sarah's husband. Servants who whisper about Sarah not being of sound mind, whispers of hysteria, and the strange lore that exists around this bog body and what it might have brought into the home. And we follow Lucy's struggle to try and help her sister to decide whether or not she is imagining things or whether she might be telling the truth. Blood on her tongue, like My Darling Dreadful Thing, is being described, and rightly so, as a glorious gothic dark tale of horror. And this is a horrifying story. It really does get the atmosphere right, and I love the characterization all the way through it. I loved Lucy's character. I love Sarah's character, how she develops. There is this dark tension between Lucy and Sarah's husband. There is also a sapphic love story that emerges through the novel, and there is folklore upon folklore piled into this tale that does get incredibly gruesome, incredibly gory at points, and yes, will make you squirm. It is a very enjoyable gothic horror story, and I was absolutely there for the scenery, for the goriness of it, for the horrors that unfolded. There's also a lot going on in this story. If you were going to try and distill down what this story is actually about, well, it's a vampire story. It's a story about bog bodies. It's got fairy lore in it. It has fungus horror. You have possession horror. You have the horror of hysteria and the way that women were treated in the 1800s. You even have straight up murder mystery in the book. There are a lot of elements to this book, and all of those layers, I wasn't sure that they melded together perfectly. It felt busy at points, and it felt very dramatic. And I was left with a feeling that the book was trying to do a lot. And also, I didn't particularly connect with how it ended. And I've chosen my words very carefully there because I don't want to say I didn't like it. I don't think it worked. I didn't connect with it. It went in a particular direction that I've seen other reviewers say, oh, I was surprised that they went for that. It didn't really ring true to the gothic setup of it, but it was a bold choice. I will commend it for being a bold choice and actually going, okay, all right, fine, you've gone in that direction. I had set myself very high expectations going into this book, given my love for My Darling Dreadful Thing. This is ultimately a very good gothic horror story. I think people who are new to this author's work will enjoy it and they will get a lot out of it. You need a strong stomach for parts of it, but I think it was realised and played out very well. They went in a direction that I wasn't particularly enamored with, let's say, but I would still recommend this book to people. I will also say I appreciate any book that gives nods to the story of Bridget Cleary. If you don't know her story, look it up and prepare yourself. I next had a run of 3 audiobooks that I was listening to in succession. They were quite quick, actually, while I was reading one of my hard copies. And each of these I ended up rating solid, decent, yet enjoyable, not world-beating, but perfectly fine. I ended up listening to Honeysuckle Bone, which is a ghost story, and I think it's actually classed as a YA book that is set in Jamaica. It is the story of a young woman from America who ends up going to work in Jamaica, the same area that her parents are from. She goes to work in the home of an incredibly wealthy, well-to-do politician and his wife. Set in the modern day, she is the nanny to the children in the house, and she also starts to bond with the other staff members there. But while she is in the home, she starts to notice strange things. It appears that the house that she has moved into may be haunted, and that there may be secrets among the different family members and in the community at large. Honeysuckle Bone was a perfectly enjoyable ghost story with a murder mystery at its heart. It was nice to read a story that was entirely set in Jamaica, that had a lot of references to Jamaican culture. It was atmospheric, it felt luscious in parts, the scenery was gorgeous, and it did have a bit of a slow start for me, but it did have a decent murder mystery at the heart of it, a mystery that is involving the ghosts, and it kept you listening and it kept you hooked. That being said, it did very much feel like a YA novel, so there is a lot of focus on our protagonist's relationship, her growing relationship with the staff and the people around her, the secret that she is hiding, the secret that involved a friend of hers who is no longer around back in America. And there was much more focus on that than there was on the ghosts for me. For me, as a diehard horror fan and normally reading adult fiction, I would have liked more ghosts. I would have preferred more time spent with the Jamaican folklore. It was a lot of internal monologuing, but that's what you'd sort of expect from a YA book. But it was a good pretty spooky enough cozy story that I would recommend. Then I decided I needed to get on the summer slasher train. It is my ambition to get through a good chunk of summer slasher books for summer so I can bring more recommendations to you. I love a summer slasher. I've got some books on my shelf that I absolutely recommend, and it's worth a whole video to give you those absolutely summerween vibes. Oh yes, a campsite where the sexy teens were killed 100 years ago tonight. A town where there was a serial killer, but now the serial killer's come back? Surely not. Summer slashers, again, are often got a YA focus. If they're not directly YA, you're dealing with younger people in that. So me, who sometimes struggles with YA stuff, where I'm like, please grow up and get on with it, I do this to myself, honestly. But some of these were good. So I listened to one that was highly recommended, The Lake House. This is an interesting supernatural slasher with a bit of a twist. The Lake House involves 3 girls who are being sent to this summer camp retreat on the edge of a lake, in this island, in this massive lake. They are going to go there. It is this very, very nice retreat that their parents have sent them on, and they will be left there. So it opens up with them coming into the island on a boat. The 3 girls get off. They don't really know each other. They're making friends. They've all got different personalities. They arrive, the boat sails away, and they go to the camp house, the lodge house, where they will be staying, and it's been burned to the ground. They find a dead body close to the burnt out shell of the lodge, and they realize they have no way of contacting the outside world. They can't call the boat back. They have been left there with the expectation that no one else will come to the island for several weeks. How are they going to survive? And who's done this? What else might be on the island? I would say this is far more a survival horror book than it is technically a summer camp slasher, but there absolutely are horror elements in here. It's much more about the 3 girls and them bonding, them trying to survive and trying to use their wits together to exist on this island, trying to get help. They discover a secret cavern, which has got a big cage in the wall in there. Oh, that's not a good sign. Was there an animal or a thing in there? And they also see glimpses of people. There's a lot of tension as they're trying to survive and trying to get help and trying to camp. And do they stay? Do they go? The weather doesn't help. As a thriller slash horror, it was perfectly decent. It did have really nice characterization in it. These 3 teenage girls who are left on the island that might think, oh my god, are we setting up for some really cheesy dialogue and dynamic between them? Actually, I thought these 3, their characterization, the way they developed, worked really well. I actually quite enjoyed the friendship, and that's what carries the book most of the way through. I'm not a huge survival horror fan. I'm much more about the spooky camp where everyone's sitting around and thinking it's fun, and then, whoa, scary stuff comes out. That's what I was kind of hoping for, but I didn't mind the fact that I was in a survival horror story. It was well executed. It did have some quite creative supernatural twists in it, little over the top, ludicrous, but, it's a sort of a teeny horror. Of course it's going to be like that. Another perfectly fine summer horror book, good to listen to on audio, why not? Then I struck closer to gold with the summer slasher vibe because I read How to Survive a Slasher. This book has been compared to Scream, the Scream movie series, and I think that's a good description, and I think it delivers on that. It follows the story of non-binary CJ, who lives in Satterville, which has been nicknamed Slasherville because it was the site of multiple slasher attacks in the past. The lore of the story is good. You have references to some teens at a summer camp who were attacked by a masked man. Then years later, the sole survivors of that attack were attacked in their home by a relative of the original slasher. But now it seems that the slasher may have returned to seek out CJ and their family. The story of these killings has been immortalized in a series of books by a mysterious writer that has sparked a massive fandom and an entire slasher festival in the town where all these killings took place. I mean, people are fine with it. It is referenced in a kind of funny way in the book, like, was this a good idea? But then it turns out another killer may be on the loose, and this time they are targeting CJ. CJ learns about this because they receive a copy of a manuscript that is seemingly a new book in the slasher series and is pointing to what will happen to them and to their loved ones around them. I loved the inventiveness of this book. I loved all of the slasher nods that were in there, and that it was funny. It knew exactly where it was taking inspiration from, and it created a really good teen story. It was great to see a well-written non-binary queer character at the heart of this, where their queerness isn't the reason that they are going to be struck down. You have a great cast of supporting characters, you've got a little bit of a romance in there, you've got really nice development of various tropes, and it does pay homage to all of your favourite films. At first I rated this at 3.5 stars, but I think I'm going to round it up to a 4-star because it was really enjoyable. It's ludicrous, it's over the top, but it's funny, and I enjoyed it. It went in the directions that it wanted to, and fair play. With that little collection of fun, campy, cozy horror books on audio, I then decided to read something utterly devastating, and it was a solid 5-star. It is The Reformatory. The Reformatory initially came out in 2023, but I think it got a lot of press and a lot of traction in 2024. I've only just read it. I had heard so much about this book. I had heard so many people raving about it, saying that it was heartbreaking, it was gut-wrenching, and it was a really good horror story. And they were right. This is a solid 5-star, and I think it is a wonderful book by Tananarive. The Reformatory is the story of a young boy, Robbie Stevens Jr., and his sister Gloria. They are a black family living in Jim Crow era Florida in 1950. Their father had been heavily involved in fighting for the rights of black workers in the town, and as a result, he has been run out of the area and is living in secret in Chicago under constant fear of potential retribution should he ever come home. Gloria is left with the task of raising Robbie, who's 12 years old, as they live in this town trying to hide their identity, given the fact that there are so many people who would like to see Robert Stevens Sr. dead and are not afraid to go after him through his family. But one day, Robbie Jr. makes the mistake of kicking a white boy who makes unwanted advances towards Gloria. The white boy is the son of a very wealthy landowner, and this ends up with Robbie being hauled to the courts. And the judge decides it would be best if Robbie spent 6 months at the Gracetown School for Boys, a reformatory that has a notorious reputation for how brutal it is. Robbie is sent to the school while Gloria on the outside does everything she can to speak to lawyers, to speak to campaigners, to speak to friends and family or anyone she knows to try and get Robbie released, get his sentence reduced, or just to get him out of there. We see Robbie as he arrives in the school confronted with the terrifying figure of Warden Haddock. He rules with a smile that masks the fact that he is an absolute psychopath and one of the worst human beings imaginable. Robbie quickly learns just how horrible life can be at the reformatory, the punishments that are meted out for the slightest infractions. But as he's making friends, he notices something else in the school, that he can see ghosts, or haints as they're called, but also the ghosts of several boys who were killed in a mysterious fire that occurred many years ago. Robbie has a gift of being able to see and communicate with them, and this is a gift indeed that is useful to him, that is useful to the ghosts, but it's also useful to the warden, who knows that the land is haunted, and he would very much like to purge the land of the spirits that know everything that has occurred. This book is best classed as historical fiction with horror. It is a horror story in the sense that it has ghosts, it has hauntings, ghosts that are not pleasant, that are not passive and just sort of float around, ghosts that are fully active and full of anger and rage at what has happened to them. And it's also a book about the horrors of racism, the horrors of living in Jim Crow America, what it would have been like for black families, what it was like for white families who were trying to be supportive, what it was like for anyone who did not support or was not a member of the Klan. The book is beautifully written with wonderful historical detail. It feels very tense from the start. The tension that everyone would have been living under, particularly the black families, of how do you fight for justice but not put a foot wrong that's going to end up with you literally being lynched. That tension is carried through. You experience it with Robbie in the school, of him trying to play by rules where the goalposts are shifted constantly. You have that tension with Gloria on the outside as she's fighting for justice but also trying to hide her name so it's not mentioned in front of the wrong person whose daughter she is, because those people were like, oh, okay, well, we'll teach you a lesson. All that I've said there may make you think, oh God, that sounds like a really bleak, heavy book. And while it is hard-hitting, I can only say that it was incredibly entertaining to read, even though it's about very difficult subject matter. It's not relentlessly bleak. It is not so heavy that you are reading it going, I can't take much more of this. this. The plot moves at a pace. There are curveballs thrown in. There are changes in direction that keep you hooked to the story and really invested on what is going to happen, because you can't predict what is going to happen. It's not just one note all the way through. It's nice that it's layered and it has different changes of direction, that the characters have different motivation as you go, because you do feel this tension of like, they can't possibly carry on like that. And the characters sort of do respond accordingly, of going, something needs to happen, we need to change tact here because this isn't going to work for long. It does have moments of hope, it does have moments of joy in there. It is tense, and yes, there are scenes in it which will be hard to read. There are references to things that could be triggering to some people. Exercise caution going into it, but I do recommend it as a truly wonderful book that has a very hard message at the center of it. And hopefully you don't need me to say this, but no matter how many times we've heard the message of how bad racism is and the power of racism, what can happen when people wield it, it's important to keep reading about it. And this is a great book that demonstrates what happens when people use racism to win, to wield their power. It really hammers home just the horrors of what it would be like living in that era, and what that must be like for people still living in those sorts of regimes today. An absolute 5-star banger, well worth reading. Coming to the end of June, I dove into a book that would be probably classed as one of the most highly anticipated books of 2025. In a different genre from horror, it was The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. Okay, beautiful cover. Can we just, oh, she's so shiny. Oh, she's so pretty. Now, this is the latest book by Rachel Gillig. Rachel Gillig, world famous for writing One Dark Window, a duology, One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns. They're on my shelf there. I am not a big romantasy reader. I like a scant few, and One Dark Window is one of them. I loved that book. It just ticks so many boxes for me, for someone who's not a big romantasy fan. So I had high hopes for The Night and the Moth, and let me get into it. The Night and the Moth is another duology, so this is the first book. You need to be prepared that it's going to end on a cliffhanger. I know that's an ick for some people, but it happens. It's the story predominantly of a woman called Sybil Denning, but we know her as Six. She is in the... Where do they live? So this is all set in the Stonewater Kingdom. Fantasy setting, just be okay with that. She is one of 6 diviners. They live at Ashling Cathedral on the top of a tor, and their job simply is to divine the future for people who come, who pay money to the abbess who rules the cathedral and looks after the diviners. They tell this fortune by being drowned in a sacred spring. They will see visions and portents that are linked to 6 omens, 6 godlike creatures that people worship, that they acknowledge are in the land or were in the land years ago. One of the key features of the diviners is that they have a shroud across their eyes. Their eyes are always hidden. They can see through the shroud, but they always wear this sort of blindfold, and they are revered as these incredible, ethereal, divine beings, but they are just girls, women. At the start of the book, the newly crowned and very young king arrives at the Stonewater Kingdom with his many knights and his guards, knights of all different genders as well, and they arrive at the cathedral to have this divination take place, and Six is going to do it for them. Among the knights, there's a very, very sexy, dark-haired guy with charcoal around his eyes and earrings, and he's just doesn't even look at Six, and she looks at him and is like, oh my god, enemies to When Six carries out this divination for the king, it has a number of bad omens in it, but then she notices that there may be something more at work with the king and his knights, that they're there for seemingly different reasons, maybe not to get their fortune told, but then the rest of the diviners start to disappear from the tour one by one, and Six is left wondering what has happened to the girls, what is really going on as part of her service that she is so devoted to the cathedral. She goes to the king and the knights and the broody sexy one, and she will end up working with them with a trusty lovely gargoyle as her companion. Cutest thing in this book, this gargoyle. The king and his men need her help with a mission that they are conducting in secret, and she needs their help to find her friends. So The Night and the Moth overall was fine to me. I think I came into this expecting to love it, that it was going to be another good Gothic, dark romantasy in there, not like dark romance as in like really woo woo up there, nothing wrong with that, but this is not the category we're in. On the darker side with gothic themes of romance and fantasy, that's what I'm going for here. There's no rope play or people stalking someone and going, it's because I love you. Whereas One Dark Window had this gothic fairy tale quality to it that I just responded to so well and so enjoyed. This is more a story about sort of religious control. It is a very fantasy setting. I think that the plot was a little bit convoluted at the start. This setup of the diviners and the cathedral, we needed a little bit more time to establish the reverence around the cathedral, around the diviners. It sort of galloped a little bit quickly past that, and I was left a tiny bit confused. And then we have this mission of the remaining diviner, Six, her real name is Sybil, going on this quest, and she's got to team up with the knights, with the king, the young king, who's a bit inexperienced, and he relies on his knights, one of whom is Maud. Oh my god, she's a great character. And of course the sexy knight, who Six immediately goes, oh well, he just won't do it all, and we all know what's going to happen there. If you love your romantasy, Rachel Gillig does it very well. She does it very well. She creates a wonderful world. It's got gothic tropes to it. A lot of people were saying it's a really gothic book. I didn't get that. I didn't really get that. I got good fantasy. I would have liked more world building, if anything, but I wasn't getting heavy gothic tropes. Rachel Gillig does create funny characters along the way, and the gargoyle in Night and the Moth is the real star, I think. It's a little bit confused in some of the dialogue of the gargoyle, but it has a really important role, and I really liked that character in there. It lifted the story and it gave you those moments of light relief. When I finished the book, I concluded that romantasies often aren't for me. I have dabbled in them in the past. I've read a couple that I actually ended up really liking. Otherwise, romantasies that are beloved by so many people, and if you love a romantasy, they are great. Escapism, you might feel them as escapism, you might absolutely love the storytelling and the books, and it's no shade to the authors or any readers who enjoy them. I get more frustrated with romantasies, and I can only give you my honest opinion, is that it does feel the same sort of formula. Enemies to lovers, the trope there is to have tension, is to have people really just not liking each other and jibing and nudging each other. We all know what's going to happen, and I'm just terrible for breaking tension, for going, for God's sake, do it, go on, do it while you're mad at each other, go on. Male and female characters in there, they do fall into quite common tropes. We've got a little bit of spunkiness and sparkiness in there. It's nothing that's particularly new, and it's nothing that's necessarily progressive. It's just my point of view. It was a good story. It was a good romantasy, and I wanted to finish it, and I wanted to get through it. And will I read the sequel? I probably will. It was enjoyable, but I wasn't swept away. And having just read the Reformatory and having listened to a lot of good, enjoyable books this month, I wanted something that was really going to capture my heart and my soul, like that fucking chainsaw outside. I don't know what he's chainsawing. There's nothing left. They've cut down all the trees. Oh, you fucker. On reflection, Night and the Moth was a struggle for me to read at points because I just wasn't fully engaged in the story. However, it is a good romantasy. Romantasy, you sort of know what you're in for, and this book delivers, and it does a good story, decent characters. It's not world beating, but it's fine. So there we go. The final book that I read, literally just finished. I'm still sort of formulating thoughts on it, and I may come back with it. It was a solid thriller. I decided to just bite the bullet and try another psychological thriller. It was The Family Game, and this is by Catherine Steadman, who is an actress and has also started writing thriller books. I listened to the audio. Catherine Steadman narrates the audio, and I will say the reason that I ended up quite enjoying this story was her narration. She is such a good audiobook narrator. She's an actress, and you can tell, and she did a great job on the audiobook, which sort of kept me hooked. The reason I picked up The Family Game is that I'd heard a lot of people say, hey, this is quite like Ready or Not, which is one of my favourite comfort horror films. I Love that film. Ready or Not, if you've not seen it, oh, I love it. Over the top, ridiculous, such fun. The book has some of those vibes. It's a story of an author, an English author, Harriet Harry, and she is marrying into this American billionaire family, incredibly wealthy. She is marrying her beloved Edward. They've only known each other for a year, but he's proposed and she's got to now get in touch with the family. He's sort of been estranged from them, but they want to welcome her into the fold. She also finds out quite early on in the book that she's going to be having a baby. I don't love pregnancy tropes in books, but actually this one worked quite well. And as she gets to know the family, she finds out two things. They have this bizarre sort of ritual of games that they play that she's not allowed to know about until they start playing them. And also the father-in-law, her father-in-law to be, Robert, the head of the family, is very attractive. He's very dashing, you know. She's almost like, oh my goodness, do I like him? He gives her a cassette tape that he says is the making of his own book. But what is actually on the tape could be a series of confessions, these strange stories that absolutely terrify her. So you have Harriet marrying into the family, wanting to be with a man she loves, but what is she getting herself into? This was a solid psychological thriller. It was completely over the top. It is ludicrous in parts, but you have to kind of suspend your disbelief with thrillers like this. I will sometimes maintain I do go in with a suspension of disbelief. Sometimes thrillers really take the piss with that, or they're so ludicrous and trying to be realistic that it's just not enjoyable. When you've got something that is really OTT, world of billionaires, they're playing weird games, all the family members are fine with it, I'm like, yeah, okay, bring it on. You've lent into it, I like it. It was well plotted, it was well paced, I like the characters in it, and it does build to, yes, there's twists. You can expect that there's twists in it. I thought it was decently executed. It had moments of just, well, that's weird, or that's stupid, but actually it wasn't bad at all. I can't say any more without giving away spoilers of this, but of all of the psychological thrillers that I've listened to on audio, most of them have been disappointing, but this one I think I'm going to put up with, you know what, give it a go. Those are the books that I completed in June. I did have one DNF, and I have been waxing lyrical about this over on the TikTok, because I DNF'd a surprising book, perhaps surprising to anyone who follows me. I was reading An Academy for Liars by Alexis Henderson. Now, this is dark academia. It follows the story of a young woman, Lennon, who is having a terrible time in her relationship, not really knowing where she's going. She's seeing strange things, and she is whisked away. She's invited to this institution, this place to continue her education. She is an adult, by the way. And this academy that focuses on the power and the magic of persuasion, of lying, of convincing people to do things. It's a really interesting magic setup, and the world building and the scenery of this academy was luscious and gorgeous. But I DNF'd it because I realised I can't stand most of the students in dark academia books. Most of them don't have enough spookiness. They don't have enough of the darkness in it. We end up listening to the dramas of any of the students, be they teenagers, and a lot of dark academia is sort of YA focused, and of course, because it's an academic setting, it's going to have young people in it. I'm the problem here. I'm the problem. But we listen to the drama of the students, the adult students who may be at university or college, and there's just a lot of that. And then there's a chosen one suddenly, and the chosen one doesn't want to accept it. And I do find it wearying. I find it, no, I can't. And even Alexis Henderson, whose books I have so enjoyed in the past, Year of the Witching, House of Hunger, really good world building and scenery. This one, while I like the world building, I just was getting frustrated with the characters. It's not a hard DNF because I feel like I should go back to it. And this is not a judgment on the book, because how could I possibly judge a book that I have not finished? I'm merely explaining why I DNF'd it. But it could be brilliant. There could be a really good story in there, but I really was struggling with it. So if anyone has read Academy for Liars and they say, no, you need to keep going, it really does get good beyond, oh, it's a chosen one. I can't possibly be the chosen one. No, I will teach you, and maybe have sex with you. Does it get better? Does it elevate from student drama? Nah. After doing my ranting post about that on TikTok, I did get sent I've gathered a bunch of dark academia recommendations that don't involve the students, don't involve the young people, that do involve the professors or adults, that aren't so much about the teenage drama. So I'm going to look at those probably for the autumn. It feels like an autumnal sort of thing, and I will report back. there you have it. There is my June wrap up. It was a fine month. It had some good books in there, a couple of disappointments, and some just generally okay ones. But I am so set up for July because I have a bunch of very exciting books on my TBR. I got approved for a slew of ARCs, advanced reader copies, of books that I've been so excited for. I have just started House of Splinters by Laura Purcell, the sequel to Silent Companions. I've got Slash Beauties on there. I've got House of Idle by Delilah S. Dawson. I have got a new T. Kingfisher book sitting on there. And there are a bunch of other books that are coming out that are still sitting on the shelf, recommendations that you have shared with me. I am very excited. So there will be a video out very soon looking at my favorite books so far in 2025 and upcoming horror that we should all be looking out for in the rest of the year. Feel free to jump in the comments and let me know about what you've been reading in June and what were your favorite books, and also weigh in on any of the books that I've mentioned, whether you loved them, whether you hated them, whether you had a different perspective on them. It's all welcome. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already so I can keep bringing you more content, and let me know the spooky things you are reading and you are watching this month. Stay spooky, bye bye.